Okay, I'll go back. Look at there. There we are. There we are. I don't think I'm tall enough for this, but it's all right. Y'all should have warned me not to sing. I'm the speaker. I should not have sang my heart out. Heavens to Betsy. Thank y'all. Woo! Okay. All right, here we go. Come, Lord. Baggage. A lot of baggage. Years and years of baggage lay strewn across the yard of my life. The carnage of my multiple attempts to unpack everything by my own strength. And yet I still felt lost, knowing I wasn't walking the path that I knew God had for me. Why? I just couldn't understand. I was unpacking everything right. I was doing all the right things. What was I missing? Hi, my name is Billie, and I came to recovery for codependency, control, love and relationship issues, and anger. Hi. This is the face of someone who found that baggage can and does have a proper place, and I found it with the help of Celebrate Recovery. I was born in Florida and brought up in church. Lots of them, actually. You name it. Pentecostal, Nazarene, Catholic, Baptist, even 5 years living on the Latter-day Saints ranch. And it all just depended on what mask my birth mother decided we needed to wear at the time. My parents divorced when I was 3. My father remarried and moved to Arkansas with my stepmother. I would travel to be with him each summer and absolutely dreaded returning to Florida each time. You see, I was living in my own private hell that I knew better than to speak about, let alone whisper. If I did, it meant that it was all true. And it meant that my mother, my protector, my provider, she might get in trouble. You see, my birth mother had resorted to prostituting not just herself, but me as well. I remember it starting around the age of 7 or 8, but I'll spare you those details. Rest assured, the movie reel of my mind would never be approved, even for the most mature of audiences, let alone a child who was living in this daily horror. I started trying to move in with my father when I was 10, but my birth mother found out and made my life miserable from then until I was 13, when I was finally able to make my escape. The best part in my mind was that I was able to leave with my secrets still intact. But that also birthed in me a need to control all the narratives. The best way I found to push the trauma and damage down was to work hard. Everyone loved and doted on a hard worker, right? So that's exactly what I did. I made sure that I was perfect in school and at home, and if my name was mentioned anywhere in the community or around my family, the response was nothing short of proud or highly impressed. My persona was intact, and I maintained the narrative. No one would know my past secrets, and most certainly not my current ones. Of course, no one would, because I was just merely a teenager sowing her wild oats. You see, I learned very well as a child that the best way to get men to love you was between the sheets. So I took that as a personal challenge, and I honed my skills at making as many men fall for me as possible. I used my eyes and attractive personality to come in clutch as often as I could. Little did I know this had a term, and it was called codependency. My newfound lifestyle of promiscuity warranted a couple of tricky visits all alone to a local health clinic. That was a small price to pay to just be loved by someone. It was during one of these trips that it was mentioned that I should consider seeing a doctor, which I eventually did. And it was at the tender age of 16. I was given an official diagnosis that meant it was impossible for me to get pregnant. Wait a minute, what did I care? This piece of news just paved the way for me to find the love that I'd been searching for without facing any consequences. So I dove deeper into my controlled chaos of secrets, cloaked in pure perfection. So my striving for said perfection, both personally and professionally, carried over into young adulthood. I moved away to college, where I met a certain boy, a normal boy. A boy who preferred to be a wallflower and not steal any of my spotlight, so basically he was perfect for me. We married a short time after dating, and I looked forward to my new normal life. Sure, there were plenty of red flags, but it's fine, I'm fine, we're all fine. No one saw them but me, and I found ways to distract, and they worked every time. Surely my narrative would be perfect now. After a few years of marriage, I met a doctor who said they didn't think it was quite impossible for me to have children, but very improbable. So I did as I did everything in life. I took control. Temperatures, medicines, injections, tests, all the things. Only to face 3 miscarriages back to back. I was devastated and mad. Devastated as anyone would be, of course, but more importantly, mad because my life was not going as planned. I wasn't in control, and I was getting pretty dadgum tired of it. So one night at a small group meeting, in the middle of my pastor's living room, I worked up the courage to just ask for physical healing. I couldn't voice for what yet. Otherwise, how would I maintain the control of the narrative at my new church? But my church family did as the scriptures instructed and anointed me with oil and prayed over me. My stubbornness to conceal was thankfully smaller than the healer in that moment. And God worked a miracle, and 9 months later, Belle was born. Here we go. Not only were my plans coming together now, but I had something to feed my control and mask all my codependency. It was wrapped in pink blankets and cloaked in the cutest, chubby little 6-pound baby girl there ever was. After another miscarriage, I welcomed another chubster, only he's wrapped in blue this time. And my life was finally complete, exactly everything I needed it to be. Never mind the chaos that was bubbling up behind closed doors. The first time he ever laid a hand on me, we were in college. It was a reflex, right? He didn't mean it. He loved me. And I knew he loved me because I knew how to make men love me. More small red flags were continually hoisting to billow in the wind of our home. They became too many to even recognize anymore. A trickle of codependent excuses quickly became a downpour over the years and kept those flags drenched and flat against the flagpoles so nobody noticed. Everyone loved him, so it was easy to excuse it away. As the years wore on, I became more desensitized and apathetic, and I found myself in an emotional affair with an old reconnection. He was an escape from my reality. With him, I could just be me. No excuses, no need to control anything, no need to hide what was going on, just be me. I couldn't remember the last time I ever felt this untethered. But when I came to my senses and realized what I was actually doing, I came clean. But at that point, my husband's rage no longer cared about decency or hiding. The psychological manipulation toward my kids and myself had become nearly an everyday occurrence. I began to question my own sanity and wonder if all the things he was saying about me were perhaps true. Was I really making all this up? He would act stunned and deny as I would relay the latest account of his rage exploding and leaving carnage scattered across the three of us. So maybe I really was making all of this up. But my son had the bruises to prove it. Just became another Wednesday after dinner mint as another blow-up would happen and my kids would retreat to their room to try and drown the screaming matches. How had I, someone so independent and strong, gotten to a place where I was allowing this? How had I, the one who swore she would never allow her kids to see anything like I did as a child, allowed my own to now be complacent in their own understanding of this is just our life? As the clock ticked and time passed and his cycles of rage to perfection to depression, back and flow, back and forward, all my determination to keep things perfectly encapsulated in the family persona stood firm. Surely no one knew the mental and emotional and sometimes physical abuse that was now the everyday norm for us. We may not have been safe inside our walls, but we were sure safe from the daggers of prying eyes and questions. I just had to keep the masks on when we walked out the doors. There eventually became a point where my heart knew that something had to change, but my mind was so ingrained in these toxic patterns that it felt as though my spineless threats to get out were simply Sunday afternoon comics. Just shy of the 20-year mark of our marriage, one of my children said, "Mama, we've already lost one parent. We cannot lose you too." And that's when I knew it was time to flip the script. In October of 2017, I created a boundary around myself and my children, and I separated us from the cycle. 6 days later, I walked into my first Celebrate Recovery meeting. This time it was for myself and not just in support of my friends who went to this weird kumbaya meeting. I can remember sitting in my first small group thinking, hey, it's me, I can talk to a brick wall about anything. This is going to be easy. But the moment I said, "Hi, I'm Billie, and I'm a grateful believer," the years of excuses and controlling the narrative and shouldering far more than I was ever created to bear, the rain clouds began to pool in my eyes. Then came and I'm here for codependency and control, and those pools spilled down my cheeks as fresh air filled my lungs with hope for the first time since I could remember. Hope for a future free of manipulation and struggling to hold it all together. Hope for a future of showing my children that it is never too late to make a change and break cycles. Hope for a future of throwing my arms open and embracing the goodness that God has been waiting to shower me with. However, walking in the doors the first time was the easy part. Walking in the doors the second and third and 27th time was harder. Why? Because that first CR meeting didn't cure it all. Spoiler alert, it doesn't cure it all. It took walking in the door again and again and opening up each time that gave me the courage to just take the next right step. We divorced in 2018, and he remarried just a mere weeks after the ink had dried. As I navigated this new single mother life, new trials popped up what seemed like every day. With no man in the picture, I found myself thrust into being a father and mother of a 12-year-old boy and a 15-year-old girl who just needed some fatherly validation. With no financial support, I worked to scrape the bottom of an already dry barrel every day. Shortly after, I unexpectedly lost my 20-year career, and that whole put one foot in front of the other business that CR talked about had suddenly become a phrase I wanted to bury in my backyard and cover with concrete. How in the world am I supposed to do that? My 20-year marriage and my 20-year career were over. My kids have no dad, and they're trying to navigate their own trauma. My bank account was acting like a slinky on a stairwell, and you want me to do what with my foot? Now I'm just mad, and my responses to even the smallest of triggers were becoming anything but pleasant. Years of my control tactics were being peeled away as I worked to unpack that suitcase. But as those layers came off, I realized that tucked away was a vein of pure anger. Anger that had disguised itself through the years as pride. So, time to put one foot in front of the other and walk back into meeting number 47 or whatever it was at this point. As the meetings and the unpacking and the tears wore on, I also come to realize I had some love and relationship issues still growing in my garden that needed tending to. I still fully expect that as I continue to work my recovery, God will reveal other areas I need to work on through at the right time in His time. I want to take a minute, though, and talk specifically about a point in my Celebrate Recovery journey that I felt was the biggest turning point for me. You see, I'd been steadily in therapy for nearly 14 years, and I'm no stranger to working through the hard stuff. And while I knew this Celebrate Recovery journey would not be easy, I was not intimidated. I marched head on into each new layer. That is until it was time for me to work through my first step study in 2019. When they made the announcement that they were taking names for the women's study, I can assure you my name was not first on the list. As a matter of fact, the deadline had passed for signing up when I finally got over my stubborn self and begrudgingly messaged the women's ministry leader to ask for a set of books. But I showed up for my first session, and I heard of the depth that was to come, and I showed up every week thereafter in anxious anticipation. The thing is, I knew the anxious part was not of the Lord, and therefore meant the enemy was petrified with what was about to happen. Step 4 asks us to make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Fearless. I felt as though there was no way I could do this part. I said, "You've asked enough of me, Lord. We're good." But with the help of my step study sisters each week, I continued to work it. I was able to lay everything bare that was buried deep in the proverbial suitcases in ways I had not quite done before. A few more weeks of work brought me to step 9, where we're to make direct amends with such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And I can remember reading those words on the screen the first time I attended a meeting for myself and thinking, no way. Do you know what my ex did to me and my family? Have you met my birth mother? Because of working these steps in the slow, methodical way they're designed to be worked, I was able to sit across the table from such persons and not only truly forgive them for the wrongs they committed against me, but ask for their forgiveness where warranted. The freedom that lies in that step alone is something I can only feel is what the Bible means when it says in Isaiah 40:31 about those who wait for the Lord being renewed and mounting up with wings like eagles. Because once I completed that step, I sure felt lighter than I had in my entire life. You know those suitcases I keep talking about? I was finally able to connect what this study did for those. You see, I've never had a problem unpacking cases throughout my life and working on my junk, but this step finally helped me give the shirts back to their proper owners. Burn those pants that were never intended to be in my suitcase. And put on the coats that were rightfully mine and allow them to help protect me for the similar winters that were coming. Just this month, this is a little bit old. Just this last October, I walked into meeting number 182 and got my 4-year chip. Yep. That means 5's coming up. That doesn't mean that I no longer have all the things I came to CR for. It means I'm daily working my recovery and seeing victories at every turn. Such victories include dating with boundaries for myself, more tender responses to my young adult children. Now, they might disagree from time to time, but they're more tender. And I even sat across the Cracker Barrel table from my birth mother for the first time in 30 years. Our relationship was not and will not be restored, but it allowed my 13-year-old self to truly forgive and prove to my kids that cycles are meant to be broken. One of the tools in my arsenal is my life verse that I've stood on for 20-something years now. Joel 2:25 says, I will give you back what has been stolen from you. I have leaned on that verse more oftentimes than I can count. But wait, do I even need that? I'm in recovery. Everything's been smooth sailing since I started, right? That's not something that God promises us. He told us in this world we will have trouble, even while walking through recovery. The tools learned in recovery have helped me to struggle well with what was yet to come. Navigating the ugliness of divorce was tough enough, but the ugliness of those who tried to inject themselves into my pain and hurt cut deeper than the divorce itself. I had become a leper in my own community, in my own church, and felt like I would drown under the weight of shame that was trying to thrust itself upon me. And as strong as I was trying to be, it was in these moments I really began to understand what it meant to lean into what I've learned in recovery. I had to allow these women to step into my hurt with me and hold my arms up when I felt like I couldn't hold them myself. The old Billie would have just kept pretending she had it all together. But recovery Billie knew there was a better way, a healthier, safer, and yoke is easier way. By the grace of God, I was already walking through this recovery when in January of 2019, my sweet daughter reached a point where she thought death was the only answer. I cannot explain how, but a strength rose up in this mama's bones that only can come from God. He brought to my mind all the work that I had put in, and he told me that he was not done with me nor her yet. Because my baby girl got her 3-year chip this past February. And then just this past year, my boy found himself in that same boat. Let me tell you, the family that covers together makes for some great dinner conversation. Job difficulties, financial woes, raising troubled teens, and more heartache came in waves over these past 4 years. I leaned on my forever family, as did my girl. But something was still there. I just couldn't put my finger on it. It took me nearly a year of Bible study and fasting and prayer and sharing in small group and working my recovery before it finally came to light. Back in October of 2010, are we catching on an October theme here yet? I think I'm done with Octobers, y'all. God's not, clearly. God made clear that he wanted me to share my story. I ran. There's a story in the Bible where God asked Jonah to go to Nineveh, and Jonah ran. He ran so far in the opposite direction of Nineveh that he eventually found himself on a boat being tossed at sea. When the sailors realized that the cause was Jonah, they threw him overboard where he was swallowed by a giant fish. My recovery journey has played a part in showing me that these past 4 years, I've just been living in the belly of my fish, relying on God for my very next breath of air and digging in deep to do the work in my waiting. I now stand on dry land before you, sharing my story. So let me rephrase my opening comment. Hi, I'm Billie, and I celebrate recovery in codependency, control, anger, and love and relationship issues, and I am so thankful for all that I've learned about myself through my years here. I want to tell you, the newcomer, your recovery story is for this moment. And there is a family here that is excited to see you make this step. That second step may be harder, but it will be the best step you will ever continue to take, as will be that 47th step. I want to tell you, the seasoned CR goer, your recovery story is continuing to be woven into an unbelievable tapestry that no matter what the enemy tries to tell you, just keep putting one foot in front of the next. And to both the newcomer and the seasoned, God is going to use all of our stories to show others it is never too late to flip that script. Would I have chosen my story to unfold this way? No. Am I grateful to be able to look back and see that the CR markers in my story have helped construct an unshakable foundation for whatever is still to come? Absolutely. Are you ready to unpack your baggage? Your CR Forever family is the safest place to help you do that. We are here to help each other see strongholds become struggles, and struggles become His strength to move us to new places of His best for us. So grab your suitcase and let's get to work. Thank you for letting me share.